Good morning, everybody, and happy Tuesday. Welcome back for your lunch break live with me. My name is Ivana, if you are new here. And today I have a really special guest, and I think we're going to have a really special conversation today. If this gentleman looks familiar, that is because he works with the Harlem Globetrotters. His name is Maxwell Pearce. And if he looks familiar to you, that might be because of a video that he released personally over the weekend, talking about an experience that he had on the Birmingham Fox affiliate TV station, WBRC, earlier this year, an experience he had while doing their morning show, Good Day, Alabama. So we've got the pleasure of having Max Pearce here today. Do want to make clear quickly at the top that Max said that he is appearing here today on his own behalf. He is not appearing on behalf of the Globetrotters. He is not speaking on behalf of the Globetrotters, but speaking on behalf of himself and his experience. So, Max, thanks so much for taking some time to sit down with us and explain what happened and explain why you feel how wrong this situation is. And we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivana, for inviting me.
Yes, sir. Well, let's get started and let's talk about the incident that happened, and then we'll talk about the aftermath here in just a minute. But you appeared on WBRC, again, that's the Birmingham Fox affiliate station, on their morning segment, Good Day, Alabama, in January. And in that segment, you were appearing to promote an event for the Globetrotters that was happening pretty soon after that. And during that segment, you had fruit thrown at you while you were on set trying to talk about the appearance. We do have a video of that we'll play in just a minute. But Max, can you first start off by just explaining kind of what was happening in that moment as you saw the fruit being thrown at you?
Absolutely. So I was showing them a few tricks, and then once the fruit started being thrown, I was so shocked by what was presently occurring that I didn't even know how to react. And so my natural reaction was just to smile it off and really process, is this really happening to me in this moment? So, the racial undertones that come with that are severe. And when you understand the history behind why this is so offensive, then there's no question as to, why someone would be in such shock.
I want to pull up this video and we'll play it here. And this is just part of a video that you released on Saturday talking about your experience and coming forward about that experience. So I'm just going to pull up your video and we'll play that clip of when this happened. So. So that, again, just shows I believe it was 2 tangerines and then a banana coming at you. That first one, you had the basketball. It looked like you might have had it on your finger. And then that tangerine comes from lead weather forecaster Mickey Ferguson. Correct. After that, you said it was shown in that video that there was a tangerine and then a banana. And you said that they came from, again, lead weather forecaster Mickey Ferguson and news anchor Claire Huddleston at WBRC. So while you were standing there, again, you were trying to promote the appearance of the Globetrotters that was coming to Birmingham, and you were talking with several of the people on set at WBRC. That fruit comes at you. What was your initial reaction when you saw it coming at you? Did you feel like this was they wanted you to catch it and maybe do a trick with it? Or what did you think was the purpose of that?
I cannot decipher what the purpose was. But just the mere fact or the mere idea of, throwing fruit at someone unknowingly is something to really think about. And, just having fruit tossed at you is disrespectful at the very least, regardless of whatever history comes with it. It is disrespectful at the very least.
And not only, I think it should be noted that not only just throwing fruit, throwing any object
Right.
at somebody is disrespectful and is not a good idea in the first place.
Right.
And that brings us to why the fruit, and why especially was the fruit being thrown at you as a young Black man? How is that offensive to some people who maybe are not as familiar with history, racial history, or things like that?
Absolutely. So this country in the early 1900s was keeping Black people in human zoos. And I have explained this information in my video, where the case of Ota Benga, who was an African man, and he was kidnapped from the African Congo and brought to America to be put on display in the Bronx Zoo in a cage with other monkeys. And this isn't even the only piece of history that this country has where we are blatantly referring and almost associating Black people with monkeys. But just this alone, and thinking about all of the other occurrences where athletes have had bananas thrown at him, whether it's in soccer or whether it's in hockey. Wayne Simmons had a banana thrown at him fairly recently. But all these incidents bring awareness and remind us of this history that this nation has. And so if you're educated and aware of that history, then the second that something like this happens, it's going to show up in your mental radar, and it's going to bring up questions as to, okay, what are the motives in this?
And I want to go back to that in just a second, but I do want to go ahead and talk about the apology, or in your eyes, the lack of, from several people involved. So we do know that Shannon Isbell, who is the WBRC news director, and I'm reading this to make sure I get her quotes right, she apologized to you. She apologized in a statement to AL.com, and she said that not only did she apologize to you, she appeared in a segment about racial inequality in faith last Friday, where she and you spoke on camera, and she apologized. She also appeared on Good Day Alabama, which was the same show where that segment where fruit was thrown at you. She appeared on that segment on Monday, apologized as well. But I know that you are not satisfied with that apology, because you want an apology from Claire Huddleston and from Mickey Ferguson themselves. Is that correct? And if so, can you tell us why you want that personal apology and why the news director's apology is not sufficient?
Correct. So from the very beginning, that is what I was looking for. When something like this happens, an apology from anyone who didn't do it will not make you feel the same way as if the apology came from the people who committed the act. And so initially I accepted this interview that I did with Shannon because it was presented in a way where I was going to be having this interview with Claire Huddleston, the woman who threw the banana, and it wasn't going to be with Shannon. But that didn't happen, and I'm not sure why that didn't happen. But that was an opportunity that I was going to take to educate her personally on the history of why this is so offensive. And this was going to be a teachable moment for everyone watching that interview to see how to take accountability, to learn about why this is so offensive, to educate themselves on the history behind this and what this country was doing at one point, and how it connects to the racial tension in the world today. So, not having Claire on that segment, combined with not hearing from any of these news anchors directly, whether it's via email, via phone, anything, that's very bothersome.
Absolutely. And something as well that, I think that we should go ahead and address is that this segment happened in January, and you are speaking out now. Can you tell us why the wait in speaking out, and why you feel it's important to speak out now?
Yes. So speaking out publicly is not something that's easy to do, especially when you're in a position where you might be more likely to be criticized for what you're speaking out about. But as a Black man, I can say for all of the Black people out there that when you hear of a story in where another Black person is either senselessly murdered or senselessly harassed, all due to the color of their skin, that is triggering. It triggers all of the experiences that you've had that pertain to race and the color of your skin. And so for me, having seen Ahmaud Arbery's situation and then Breonna Taylor and then George Floyd, it just brought back all of the same emotions that I felt from this experience with WBRC. And at that moment, I made the decision that I was going to go public with this and give people an opportunity to learn from my experience and inspire them to speak out to right or wrong.
You mentioned in your video that you posted over the weekend that microaggressions can be emotionally taxing. And again, I'm making sure I get your words right. I have it written down, but
Right.
you talk about these microaggressions. Do you consider this fruit throwing incident a microaggression, or what does that amount to in your eyes?
Absolutely. In my eyes, at the very least, it is a microaggression. Some people may feel like it's more egregious than that, but if this scenario was where they simply lacked the cultural awareness and historical context to understand that this is something that shouldn't have been done, then this is a microaggression, because it reminds, in this case, it reminds me of the history of what my people had to go through in this country. It reminds me of experiences that I've had growing up where other people have referred to me and other Black people as a monkey. They've drawn parallels of my appearance to that of a monkey. And so while they're not explicitly saying, Maxwell, you are a monkey, just the mere throwing of fruit, let alone a banana, implies and points to this offensive history.
I'm glad you made that point, because I think that there are questions maybe from some people who aren't as educated about that history, and even myself included, about the banana being as specifically either equally as offensive as tangerines or any other fruit. It's almost silly to even say the name of the fruit here, but the bananas being as offensive as one or the other. So I'm really glad you explained that and gave a little bit of insight into that. And that brings me to a question that I don't believe you can answer, but I want to put it out there. And that is, do you know, or do you have any sense of whether the throwing of this fruit by these two anchors was an intentional act of racism, or whether it was just extremely poor and uneducated judgment?
So I can't say whether or not it was intentionally racist. Only Claire Huddleston and Mickey Ferguson truly know what their intentions were. But I do know that it is an intentional decision to pick up a piece of fruit and throw it at someone. And especially when they don't even know that you're going to be throwing it. And that raises enough questions in itself. And so at the very least, they have an extreme lack of cultural awareness. And, you know, this is just symbolic of the kinds of conversations and interactions that this country needs to have. Like, we are such a conglomerate, but at the same time, we are so divided and live in bubbles in so many ways. And, you know, these are the products of that. And we're not going to see any real change until we can actually truly listen to each other when we speak about race, and, you know, not deny what is apparent in society today, like the daily microaggressions or privilege or anything like that.
Right. And, you know, I think that that brings us back again to this apology by Shannon Isbell, the WBRC news director, and not the direct apologies from Claire Huddleston and Mickey Ferguson, which you say have not happened.
Right.
And when you spoke with Shannon on, I'm not sure if one or multiple occasions, did she give you any sense of maybe if those anchors were going to respond, or if the station was going to let them, or even why they haven't responded and apologized yet?
No. I haven't received any information on that, and I truly don't know why there hasn't been a direct response or effort to reach out.
And when in that video, when the fruit comes at you, and again, I don't even necessarily think that it requires me describing the fruit. When the fruit comes at you, no matter what it was,
Right.
your reaction is just kind of stunned visibly.
Yeah.
But I think that there are people who I'm sure will say, well, why didn't you say something then? Why
Absolutely.
didn't you do X, Y, Z?
So I think it's important to understand the magnitude of this act, and that sometimes, just as humans in general, when we're in shock, it takes a while to truly process what is happening. And furthermore, the segment ended immediately after I caught the banana. So even if I did have an immediate reaction, that would have not been on the camera. But either way, thinking about what happened and processing it, especially the kind of person that I am, I've been taught by my parents that it's better to react impactfully than impulsively. And I think that the way that this was handled and releasing my story at the time that I did is truly the most impactful way that I could have responded to this incident.
Sounds like you had really good parents.
Thank you.
I think that, a question as well is that you talk about this coming at such an impactful time. And after a summer of just awakening in the country and about racial inequality, about injustice. And that's when you said you want to tell your story to inspire others to come out and to speak about how things are not appropriate, and to speak about things, educate people on these things that maybe are poor judgment, but that are inherently racist. So what would you, in a perfect world, what do you think is appropriate to happen to these two anchors?
I think it is appropriate that they learn the lessons from this experience. I think that they need to understand the history that comes with the actions that were committed. I think they need to understand the importance of taking accountability, not only for their own sake, but for the sake of the people watching them. I mean, these people are on TV on a weekly basis. And if you think about the kind of example that is being set right now, it kind of permits an unacceptable trend of behavior in society. And we've been seeing it. People are not taking accountability in the proper way that they need to. And we're not going to achieve any true change until people can actually take that accountability for the mistakes that they consciously or unconsciously make and learn from them. No one is perfect. I am not perfect. I am not up here saying that I'm perfect. But the one thing that is crucial and critical in any growth in this society is that accountability.
And if either of them came to you and said, look, I'm so sorry, it was so stupid, that was a horrible decision, I think that there is a question of, would you accept that apology and use that as a teaching moment? Or are you, I guess, that's the question. Would you accept that apology and use it as a teaching moment?
At this point, the situation is a teaching moment, regardless of whether that apology is issued. I would have some questions as to the sincerity of the apology. because at this point, there's pressure from everyone to make that apology. But I do think that at the end of the day, I would accept it just to set the example that, it's okay to forgive as long as people learn from that experience.
Mm-hmm. And something that you said in your video that I thought was very interesting, and that was in that video you released on Saturday evening. You said that this situation diminishes and I understand you are here on behalf of yourself, not on behalf of the Globetrotters, but you said in your video that situation diminishes the Harlem Globetrotters to that of a circus.
Right.
There are people that I'm sure will say, well, the Globetrotters' job is to entertain. And what would you say in response to that?
Well, in theory, everyone who is performing in front of a crowd or in front of any people are entertainers. Whether that's in the NBA, the NFL, music, musicians, anyone. And so you can't draw the parallel of someone who is an entertainer to saying, okay, well, you should just catch this fruit or do whatever I tell you to do for the sake of entertainment. That violates the boundaries of respect. If Michael Jordan came on this segment, I don't think fruit would be thrown at him. And so I think it's really important to analyze on various levels the understanding of the legacy that is being perceived here. The Harlem Globetrotters, they're an organization that stands for so much more than an act like this. And so it was really disappointing for me to just even have to experience it.
And something you mentioned in your video as well is that it's hard to deny that this situation happened in Birmingham that has a history of racism, that has a history of racial inequality. And I just have to ask, would this experience be different if it happened in a city other than Birmingham that didn't have the background that Birmingham has? Or does it sting a little bit extra hard because of the background of racism that unfortunately is in Alabama? Birmingham has a history of the civil rights movement, but also of many racist incidents. So is it different happening in Birmingham?
So I think that it is extremely offensive wherever it happens, but it makes it that much more damaging that this happened in Birmingham, because just like you mentioned, this is the birthplace of the civil rights movement. As I mentioned in my video, this is where 4 girls were killed in a church bombing by the KKK. These are acts of extreme, blatant racism. And for someone to currently reside in Birmingham and not be aware of the racial history, but to constantly be in front of the people of Birmingham delivering news on a weekly basis, it's really important that you understand historical context, especially as it relates to your very location. And so the fact that this happened in Birmingham makes it even more of a teachable moment, because it really highlights how unaware we can be of our racial history. It's not hard to pick up the phone, and especially nowadays with technology, you can find out almost anything. And learning is literally at our fingertips. And so for anyone who truly wants to learn, it's right there. It's out there for us. And so that's a message that I want to be sure people understand.
At this point, are you satisfied that with maybe the knowledge that maybe you will not get that direct apology from the anchors, or will you continue to ask for that apology?
At this point, I have focused on trying to make this as much of a teachable moment as I can and impact as many people as I can to voice their experiences to create change. I am past the point of expecting an apology that will be sincere. And so at this point, I'm indifferent on whether an apology is issued by these anchors or not.
This is a two-part question, and that is, what has the public response been to you after you have spoken out about this situation? And secondly, what can we as the public learn from this situation?
So the public response, for the most part, has been great. I've received a lot of support, especially from the people of Birmingham. I've been seeing a lot of things online that have been really reinforcing. One person in particular, her name is Lisa McNair. She is the sister of Denise McNair, she was one of the 4 girls who died in that church bombing that I mentioned. And so when Lisa reached out, she was just showing her appreciation for keeping her sister's name and her sister's legacy in light. And I think that it's really important that we continue to remember that story and the stories of other people who have senselessly suffered from these kinds of acts of racism.
That as a Birmingham native and a person who never strayed very far from Birmingham, I'm very glad to hear that. And we definitely want you to know, Max, that you are welcome back to Birmingham anytime. We would love to have you. And it sounds like you already know that.
Thank you. I really appreciate this, Ivana.
Thank you so much, Max, for taking your time. I know you're busy. You have your own life and you have your own athletics that you've got to get to. I know so many of us down south are talking about football, but basketball is equally as important, as we know, and you have a season ahead of you as well. So, Max, thanks so much for taking your time to explain this, to break it down for us, and really educate us on the problems that lie deep within this incident.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Max. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you.
Thank you. Even though we have technology here, like you talked about, to put us all the way from different ends of the country, there's still some sort of audio delay. So thanks, Max, so much for your time. Thank you all for watching. I hope this was as special to y'all as it was to me. So thank you, and we will see you all tomorrow.